Okay.
All right. All right, it is 7:01 p.m. on the 14th of April, 2021, and this is a meeting of the Trail, Sidewalks, and Bikeways Committee. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and the emergency ordinance, this committee needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. It's a bit cumbersome, so I ask you in advance for your patience. First, because each member of this committee is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all of the other members. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each committee member to participate in this meeting to state your name and the location from which you are participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we would vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. I'm Dr. Ken Comer, Representative at Large and Chair of the committee. Braddock District, Mr. Cosgriff.
This is Bob Cosgriff, representing Braddock District, calling from my home in Fairfax.
Hunter Mill District, Mr. Rowe. No response yet. Mount Vernon District, Mr. Klein.
Yeah, this is Jim Klein calling from my home in Mount Vernon.
Thank you. Drainsville District, Mr. Smith.
This is Wade Smith calling from my home in the Drainsville District.
Providence District, Mr. Foster.
Ben Foster from my home in Providence District.
Mesa District, Mr. Albright.
He's absent.
I think so. Springfield District, Mr. Liebert.
This is Carl Liebert calling from my home in Burke, representing Springfield District.
Thank you. Lee District, Mr. Pipkin. I always pause for a second in case people are trying to rush for their mute button. Nothing heard.
I just made him a panelist. So you should be able to unmute now.
So, Mr. Pipkin, are you here?
I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you. Sully District, Ms. Ampa. No response. Clifton Horse Society, Ms. McDaniel.
This is Katie McDaniel calling from my home at Oak Hill, which I think is Hunter Mill District.
Thank you. Fab, Mr. Newman.
Good evening. This is Sean Newman of Fab. I am here in my home in Fairfax.
Fairfax Area Disability Services Board, Ms. Cohen.
Hi, this is Debbie Cohen calling from my home in Burke.
Fairfax County Federation of Citizens Associations, Mr. Tipton. No response yet. Fairfax County Park Authority, Ms. Iannetta.
This is Beth Iannetta calling from my home in Fairfax.
Northern Virginia Builders Industry Association, Ms. Portilla.
Soledad Portilla calling from Fairfax City.
Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority, Ms. Reese.
This is Andrea Reese calling from my home in Arlington.
Washington Area Bicyclists Association, Mr. Albers.
Howard Albers from my home in Fairfax, Virginia.
Thank you. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of this committee, other than those, of course, who did not respond. It is our practice to approve this and all subsequent motions by acclamation. So I ask now if there are any objections or nay votes. Hearing none, the motion carries.
Actually, Ken, if I could just jump in, it looks like a couple of people who didn't respond are on the list. So if we could try them again, maybe they were. I think it was someone else.
That was Mr. Rowe, Hunter Mill, Mr. Rowe. Alex, you here?
I don't see him on, but I see Ms. Karen Ampa Ampa, and Mark Tipton. So if y'all
Okay,
want
I'll
to
do it
try
again. Sully District, Ms. Zampa. Maybe she's having a hard time getting unmuted. I don't have the video in front of me.
Okay, well, I guess we can move on.
And Fairfax County Federation of Citizens Associations, Mr. Tipton. Well, okay. To make the motion rather difficult here.
Can David unmute them?
Yeah, I've unmuted them. It looks like. Okay, it looks like
Karen's in the chat.
Karen, yeah, she just said something in the chat. Okay, Karen, I've unmuted you. Can you say something if we can hear you?
Can you hear me? This is Karen.
Yay,
yes.
we did it.
Cool.
Excellent. Well, Karen, tell us what you did because we still can't hear Mark Tipton.
Well, it looks like Mark logged off and logged back on. So, Mark, you want to give it a shot?
I'm using my phone for audio now because I couldn't get it to work on my laptop.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Roger that, we do hear you.
Is my audio working now?
Yes, Mark, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, had an
No,
issue.
no.
I had to go out and come back in. Thanks.
Great. Going back to where I was.
So the only two I
All
have
right.
are Albright and Rowe.
The only ones correct. James Albright and Alex Rowe. And I assume that we cannot hear them and they are not on the list. Is that correct?
Yeah.
David? Now I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of the committee. It's our practice to approve and all subsequent motions by acclamation. So I'll now ask if there are any objections or nay votes. Hearing none, the motion carries. Second, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures. The fact that we're meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for public access to the meeting. Therefore, I move that the state of emergency caused by COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this committee to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting. And that as such, FOIA's usual procedures, which require the physical assembly of this committee and the physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move this committee may conduct this meeting electronically through the Cisco WebEx video conferencing platform. This format also provides a dedicated phone line. The public may access this meeting by going to fairfax.webex.com and entering event number 129-093-2445 and password Trails 2021, capital T, small letters the rest, and no space between Trails and 2021, or by calling 844-621-3956 and using the access code 129-9093-2445. It is so moved. I will again ask if there are any objections or nay votes. Hearing none, that motion carries. Finally, it is next required to establish that all of the matters addressed in today's agenda address the emergency itself, are necessary for the continuity in Fairfax County government, and or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of this committee's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. It is so moved. I will ask if there are any objections or nay votes. Hearing none, the third motion carries, and we can move to the agenda.
Do you want to do staff who may be on?
Oh, yes. I got to put that in my regular. So before we move to the agenda, first of all, I'd like to have the staff be recognized, please.
Hey, this is David Loss from FCDOT.
Chris Wells, Fairfax County Department of Transportation.
And let me also ask if there are any members of the public or anybody else whose name I did not call tonight. Okay. David or somebody else, would you monitor our, so that gives us 18 panelists, and if that number changes, keep an eye on that so that we, if we do have somebody join us, we can make time for them to participate. Okay. Agenda. I believe the first thing, well, I'm still looking for the agenda. What is the first item on the agenda?
So just shared it.
There it is.
The active Fairfax plan update. So
Yes.
Nicole was not able to make it this week, but I'm gonna cover for her. She gave me some stuff to share. So let me again switch to a different thing to share. Stop sharing and share. Where to go? And share this. Okay, so just gotta pull up one more thing. Okay, great. Are y'all seeing like a graph on a PowerPoint?
Question 42, what is your age?
Great, and you're not seeing my email?
No, we're not.
Okay, great. Okay, so some things to hit on. So I would say the big thing we're doing at the moment, we have a series of public meetings, one for each district, another lunch and learn to come, and a Spanish language meeting as well for the Fairfax, or for the active Fairfax plan. So the next one is on the 15th, which is tomorrow, right? Yeah, the 15th. That's the Spanish one. And then there's ones basically every day next week and the following week. And the list, they're all online, both on the public meetings calendar and on the active Fairfax website. I can just run through them though. So the 19th is Hunter Mill, the 20th is Drainesville, the 21st is Sully, the 22nd is Mount Vernon, the 26th is Braddock, the 27th is Springfield, and the 28th is Providence. And those are all in the evening. And then there's also a lunch and learn at, I think, noon on the 23rd. So we've done a couple already so far. We did, I've attended the Mason one. That was really great. We had some good public feedback. So if you're able to make it, it's great, you know, to help kind of guide that discussion. We're trying to, the idea of these meetings is it's in part a sort of overview of what the planning process is, but it's also trying to get feedback from how citizens in their specific districts are feeling about, you know, how does it feel for you to ride a bike? How does it feel for you to walk? How does it feel for you to take trails? And what sort of things would you like to see going forward? And we've gotten some really good information about those. And they're, you know, they're also, in addition to that, that method of outreach, we have our outreach poll that was online. So what I have here is some of the results from some of the demographic questions, at least that Nicole shared with me, for our online as of March 12th, I guess is the most recent compilation of it. So this is just what is the age of the respondents. So mostly, you know, 30 to 50 or 51 to 70 is the two dominant blocks on that. We've had overall 656 comments also on our barriers and destinations map, and 286 comments on our planned networks map. And then this is 838 completed surveys. About 80% of the people who start the survey finish it. So I guess that means it's not that difficult. So that's good. This is the breakdown of demographics, ethnicity of the people who are filling out the survey. So that's, as you can see, it's largely white, and sort of a scattering otherwise. The second biggest group prefers not to say. So I guess I don't really have a point on that, but I guess I'm interested. And then the household income, obviously, this one, as you can see, also kind of skews towards above sort of median household incomes in the area. So we are still working on trying to reach some of the populations that we did not hit as successfully on the online survey. So some other ways that we'll be doing this, we're gonna have in-person outreach at trails, on sidewalks, at bus stops, also some food distribution sites in an event to, in an effort to sort of broaden our reach. We have bilingual posters and flyers as well that we're gonna use to help target it. We have a target individuals. We have a printed version of our surveys and maps that we're gonna distribute the government center, rec centers, etc. That'll be in English and Spanish as well. So some other things going on with the draft vision, goals, and objectives document and our draft systematic safety program plan. So we're going to continue to develop those based on public input, and we're looking for board approval in June. So that's one. Those are a couple of the other things that the public input is going to go to. And as for the future of it, so all this is sort of like phase one. Phase two, we are still kind of seeking additional funding to complete that. So we may end up breaking phase two into a smaller phase two and then a phase three, depending on the funding. But yeah, so that's sort of where things stand with that. I think our big ask from you is if you can join the outreach events for your districts, if at all possible, that'd be great. And feel free to spread the word as well. The more people that we have attending, obviously, the better. If there's any questions, I can have to try and answer them or at least note them down for the follow-up with Nicole.
David, this is Sean Newman from Fab. So I just wanted to note, anecdotally, and I haven't attended any of the meetings yet, but the folks that I've talked to who have said that they have been pretty sparsely attended. I believe there was one person at Tuesday's meeting, the lunch and learn, and it sounded like 5 at the Mason District meeting. And I have some concerns about, that low level of public engagement and being able to have a plan at the end that gets, wide public support.
Sure.
So there's one part of that. The other part is the way that the online software is working. I've attended a few meetings now, and it's kind of frustrating as an attendee because you really have no idea who else is there. You can't see anything other than the panelists, and so it's hard to know if you're the only person there, if there's 5 other people, what they're thinking, what they're doing, etc. That is very different from an in-person meeting that we used to have.
Right.
So I just wanted to express that to you.
Yeah, no, I think those are good points. Certainly for the just attendance figures. Yeah, the lunch and learn was quite sparsely attended. You're right. I think we had one member of the public. For the Mason one, I think we had 12 or 14 total attendees. 5 or 6 of whom actively participated. And you're right. I mean, that's not the easiest format. So it's sort of how they've been working. And we're still trying to figure out the smoothest way to make them go, I guess. with having people, raise their hand, and then we can unmute them and have them talk. The alternative to that, I mean, WebEx is kind of isn't the easiest way to have, like, I mean, it's got pluses and minuses. It's good for just a pure presentation, but for having that sort of interaction, then you're sort of down to making everybody a panelist, kind of like what we're doing here, which is an option, though, for public meetings, as opposed to, say, like a board meeting like this. We haven't had the best of experience with having sort of just free reign over participation, because it can sort of get a bit out of hand, and it's easier just to kind of keep things focused and moving forward in a positive direction with the sort of attendee format. But I do recognize your point of, if you're an attendee, you don't know who else is an attendee. So
Yeah.
this one we can bring up with our sort of marketing team to see if they have any suggestions as another way to approach it. Chris, you gonna say something?
Yeah, let me just add, Sean. I mean, I was at both of them. The Mason one was actually, I thought, very good. It wasn't, there wasn't 100 people there, but we had a good dialogue. The meetings were broken into, I guess, 4 opportunities for folks to talk. And unlike the meetings where we don't even let people talk and we make people type stuff in the chat, this one at least allows people to talk, and we had good dialogue. On your point about the quantity, the input to the interactive maps and the input to the survey is actually fairly decent. 600, 800. That's fairly decent. We've always found it challenging, though, to have successful outreach that reach lots of people. Pre-pandemic, the same thing would happen at an elementary school. We'd bring a bunch of computers in and line a bunch of chairs up, and we'd have like a handful of people show up at an elementary school. So, people's capacity for community involvement is often trumped by the reality of their lives. So that is also why we're doing stuff. We're going directly to food distribution sites. The one thing since the pandemic has been the impact to society and loss of income. And so all of a sudden our food distribution locations have become attended by hundreds of people. So we'll be using those opportunities to hand out paper surveys and have Spanish speaking staff to help with those paper surveys in those locations. We are trying our best on the WebEx thing about who the attendees and the number, who the attendees are. Your fellow members of FAB have made it a point to ask how many non-staff people are at the meeting, and that's a fair point. We've passed this on to our communications section chief, and she has also had that same criticism raised at our Fairfax Connector meetings. But at the moment, that is, this WebEx platform is what we're supposed to use, and you typically are just looking at the panelists and the presentations. So at the Mason meeting, again, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and the 2 different citizens made 2 different points that I'll share with the committee now, because I hadn't thought of them. It never dawned on me, and it was good to hear. They made the point that Mason is a transportation desert or a mobility desert, because the metro lines pass them by and all they have is bus service. And because they are an older jurisdiction, they don't have nice 10-foot trails on their roads. And a related point to that is that a business person in the meeting who was tied to one of the Chamber of Commerce's or one of the Seven Corners business folks or something, says he had discussions with multiple shopping center owners about reinvestment in their properties. And their answer was that they don't get the customers to justify reinvestment in their properties. And so he made the point that because the Mason district has a large underserved population that does not have the car ownership, and that therefore everything is, since there's not, since it's a mobility desert and there's not good pedestrian bike infrastructure, that if you need a car to go everywhere and there's not good pedestrian bike infrastructure, well then yeah, the customers can't get to those businesses and shopping centers. And if we had a better pedestrian bicycle network, that could actually increase the customers and therefore increase reinvestment in the community by business owners and ultimately improve the county's, tax base, whatever. So we're always looking for ideas. I've talked to Bruce Wright a couple of times, and he's said that they've pushed all of these meetings out on the FAB distribution. We're using Facebook. We're using Spanish Facebook. And again, we're actually in the process of adding stuff onto all our connector buses and stuff like that. So we're definitely trying to utilize all the channels we have. And I guess the good news is this isn't the final outreach. This is the phase 1 outreach. So as we go into the phase 2 portion, where the actual comp plan recommendations, the input gathered from these maps and the refinement of the maps goes together, then there'll be another round of outreach associated with that.
This is Wade. It seems to me though the data that you have are telling you something. You're getting pretty good responses to the maps and that kind of thing. So people are really interested in that, and that's a very personal thing. They can actually put down their own specific stuff, which is hard to do in a public meeting. But if you're not getting much attendance at the public meeting, maybe that's data that people are actually more interested in the maps and that kind of thing. They don't feel like they have to attend the public meeting to give additional information. So that could be a way of looking at it, that actually you're doing a good job with the other, and the public meetings, people don't feel like they're necessary.
This is Carl.
I mean, that would be. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say that in the past week or 10 days, I have started to see more information about this being spread organically amongst different bike teams and bicycling organizations in the area through email and news groups and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
This is Wade Smith again. Actually, I don't think these meetings were that well publicized. I didn't even know about the Drainsville meeting until I saw it. Nothing came to me about it. So I just happened to learn about the Drainsville meeting. So that may be another thing.
Deami Pipkin from Lee District. I think that the data seems skewed in terms of like the county's overall demographic. You have a county that's 50% white, where the data is far more than 50% white. And I understand what you're saying in terms of like community outreach. Right now, the data is not reaching a certain group of people. So like their input is not occurring based on the demographics that you just showed. And I hear what everyone's saying in terms of the information is good data, and I'm sure it's had a lot of valuable data. You have high income, white demographic in terms of where your data is coming from. Like a high level, and I'm not saying that those people may not have a vested interest in the trail system and this overall active Fairfax plan in a different way, but I do think that in terms of outreach and exposure, the overall active Fairfax plan should be looking to bring into the discussion the data points that are tied directly to the county as a whole. And I'm just wondering, have you all reached out to affinity groups that come from those specific missing demographics like the NAACP or Latino American groups? Like, has that been something that has occurred or thought of to have occurred?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, your point about the demographics of the data is surely correct. It's pretty glaring. And, I think part of that would just be due to the fact that it's an online survey. And so that's going to skew towards the people who have, sort of the ability and the means to fill out an online survey when and that sort of thing. So you're absolutely right that we need sort of better outreach to those underserved groups. I don't have an answer as to say the outreach as you suggested to like the NAACP or other groups. I think that's a great suggestion, and I'll pass that along and to Nicole. She could speak more to some of those other efforts. I'm not as directly involved, but yeah, I mean, I think that's a great suggestion. We'd certainly be open to other suggestions that you all may have to sort of broaden our reach. Because obviously we don't want this, we want this to be a plan for the whole Fairfax community, of course. We don't want it to be a plan for the, wealthy white people of the county, because that's not, certainly inequitable. That's not what we're trying to accomplish.
Hold on, let me add, and I'm sorry, my WebEx feed was totally all garbly, so I think I missed some of what you're saying, but I turned off everybody's video, so I caught the end of it. We do have an equity advisory group. We created 2 standalone advisory groups unique to this process: a youth advisory group and an equity advisory group. And the equity advisory group we got from our equity director in the county and their list of community groups that they have established throughout the county. So we haven't reached out to the traditional large equity organizations such as the NAACP, but we have reached out to the community-based organizations in the county through those contacts. And then the Youth Advisory Committee, likewise, is a very diverse group of under 18-year-olds that we solicited applications from through the high schools and the neighborhood and community services, because those young people are the ones in the neighborhood and community services example that are already involved in providing some leadership within their communities of varying backgrounds, the exact diverse populations we actually are trying to reach. I mean, the bottom line in pedestrian bike safety is we know that crashes and fatalities are disproportionate to our higher equity needs area. That's one data fact that we've already gathered. I mean, I've known this intuitively for 20 years, but now we have data that shows that definitively. And so it's very important to us in this process to get those voices to the table as best as we can.
I have a question. So in terms of an idea, so like one thing is probably a huge missed opportunity, but you might want to start, I think in the past when we've had public hearings for projects, we hope they find the information and they come to us. And I think in this world, we're gonna have to find new ways to get your attention and kind of like more grassroots efforts. So in the end of March, the Park Authority had a pretty well attended dog park study, which if you had like a movie premiere as everyone's getting online to be like, here are other studies or things that are happening or other public hearings that are cross-related. So you could have gotten, the attention of all the dog walkers who walk their dogs. But you could also look and have the consultant look through upcoming public hearings and figure out a way to kind of cross-promote everybody's other hearings. So that way you're reaching different targeted audiences, whether it be a VDOT public hearing, put a slide together that can kind of play at the beginning so people can kind of get previews of other things that are happening in the county. if there's other public hearings the park authority's doing, or if, we can kind of cross promote each other, since, we're doing this whole format and trying to reach people. But that might be an idea, but I think we're gonna have to go out and mine some of the people out there and let them bring the information to them where they are. And I think that's on the virtual platforms.
Yeah, I think that's a cool idea, and it does feel that it is sort of an opportunity you have with the WebEx that maybe don't as easily get for the in-person meetings. And yeah, I mean, we could put together, sort of like a standard slide and just check out what's already on the public meetings calendar and send them an email and ask if they can plug us.
Yeah, it's just a matter of putting like a slide that has what you want, and then you could just send it to them, and they can have it like kind of be previewing as everyone's getting on their meetings and waiting for everyone to show up, and that sort of thing. So it's just kind of, oh, look at this type thing.
Any other comments or questions? Ken, did you have something?
Yes, I had a question. You mentioned that you're going to hopefully send the phase 1 report to the Board of Supervisors in June. Is that going to be the draft copy going to be circulated first, or is this just going to be completed and sent in?
So the two products that will wrap up with phase 1 is the vision and goals for the overall active Fairfax transportation plan and the systematic safety action plan. Our current plan is to take that to the Board of Supervisors at their Board Transportation Committee on May 25th to get their initial input, and then ultimately back to the formal Board of Supervisors in June for their adoption. So again, the maps, and the bulk of the policy work is still in phase 2. Phase 1 is mainly the data collection of existing conditions, the vision and goals, and the systematic safety plan.
Will those be shared in draft form, or are they before the committee meeting?
I would think we could certainly share it with the Trails Committee. That shouldn't be a problem. But on the other hand, our consultant is running up against their deadline, so I'm not sure how much sooner before the May 25th Board Transportation Committee they'll have it all finished. But actually, timing wise, if we're meeting in the middle of May, that might work well.
Okay, any other comments or questions on the active Fairfax plan?
Just one question on the funding. Are you guys putting in for funding somewhere? Are you just hoping it falls from the sky after COVID, or what's the hope of a pot of money you will get? Do you have one yet?
Sorry, unmuting. Absolutely. We have requested funding multiple times. We requested funding last year at carryover. We requested funding this year as part of the FY22 budget. One of the board members brought forth a board budget consideration item for the budget, since it was not in the budget, but it was decided yesterday that it was not approved. So we will be putting in again in the carryover budget in the late summer for phase 2.
Couple of clarification questions, by the way. These magisterial district meetings are all, of course, online. So is there anything unique about the particular magisterial district that happens in that meeting, or is it one just like the other?
No, I mean the presentation is by and large the same. It's just sort of maybe trying to focus on citizen comment to specific areas, or to for some of them, the supervisors either have or will be attending. So it's sort of a specific opportunity for that as well. But the gist of it is basically the same.
The paving and repaving schedule and meetings, are they done? Because that would have been a good opportunity to cross-pollinate the information about the active transportation plan, since you're already discussing the new bike lanes and road diets and things like that. Was that the case?
Yes.
We didn't.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we purposely cross-pollinated it, but I know I mentioned it in at least half of them because it just came out of my mouth. But again, those are not a lot of people in those meetings either. So I certainly appreciate the committee's concerns, and we're certainly. We welcome Fab's trying to help spread the word, and it's good to hear Carl say that he's actually starting to hear some social media chatter on it. Maybe it just takes time, but so a couple of things that came to mind as you guys were talking. We did extend the comment period, or I don't know if we've done it yet, but we're about to extend the comment period to May 15th. So that may help.
I think we have an official announcement coming out soon,
okay.
but so just unofficially extended.
And to the answer of the are the district meetings different? No, David's right. The presentation material is not different, but again, the needs and the reality on the ground is certainly different in the district. So, even though the Lee district meeting was not very well attended, I thought the Mason meeting went well. We'll have to see how the rest of them go. But again, the intent is, and the format is set up to discuss that specific district. What are your challenges? What's your vision? What's biking like? What's walking like in that district that we're meeting on?
Chris, this is Mark. Could I ask two questions? Has the online survey deadline been extended? And separately, regarding funding for projects, I was just wondering if the large package, the 1.9 trillion that got passed by Congress last month, the American Rescue Plan Act, if any of that funding will be available for pedestrian and bike projects.
So I would assume the answer to the first question is yes. If we're extending the deadline, I'm assuming we're extending all the maps, the survey, and everything. So there's a lot of interest in the different federal funding that may or may not come forward. But to recall, the Active Fairfax Transportation Plan is just that. It's a plan. It's a comprehensive plan for the next 50 years, next 25 years of the county. And even though there will be recommendations in there, such as how we fund things more equitably and more data-driven, rather than just the traditionally loudest voices, there'll also be like a top 10 list or a top 20 list of different types of projects that when funding becomes available that we should fund. However, that's going to come after this current round of federal funding. So I am aware, and I've provided input to 3 different types of federal funding. I wasn't aware that anything had actually passed the Congress yet. But the anticipation is that there's large scale projects that can be funded, projects in the range of 20 to 25 million. I think they're calling those earmarks. There's our annual federal appropriations. those are projects of $1 million or less. And so I also provided some input on ped bike projects for those. And then lastly, there is the reauthorization of the 6-year federal transportation plan. And I can't keep track of what acronym that's called. It used to be called ICE-T or T21. It's probably something else.
The newest one was MAP 21, but I don't know if they're going to rename it again.
There you go. There is a desire on the Board of Supervisors' part to have pedestrian bicycle funding to be part of Fairfax County's ask for all of these funding pots. Although it certainly won't be 100% of our ask, because we have other multimodal projects that are road projects that also need funding. But yes, there's certainly a lot of interest in new federal funding opportunities that may come along.
Okay. I'd like to now move to the next issue on the agenda, which is the trails issue, which is going to be introduced by Mr. Jim Klein.
So real quick, Jim, did you want to present the slide yourself, or do you want me to share my screen? And whichever way you prefer is fine.
Well, right now my share thing is grayed out, so I can't.
Right, yeah, all I got to do is click a button to make you the presenter.
Okay, well, if you could do it, that'd be great. I mean, and then if I fumble around enough, then you could take over. I mean, if I could do it, that'd be great. But if I fumble too much, I'll pass it on to you.
Sure. Okay, you are now the presenter, I think.
Okay, I'm gonna hopefully share. Not the
There you go.
Here. Not that. There we go. Try to get this in. I don't know if I make it full screen, it'll. There we go. Is that bigger?
Yep.
Okay. So I was had sent in an agenda item to Bob about natural surface trails in response to Sam's input at our last meeting, who was came as a member of the public. And what I wanted to do is just share a few of these maps to kind of show some of the issues that he brought up, and then zoom in on the Mount Vernon and well, mostly the Route 1 corridor, the Lee and Mount Vernon districts, and then down by Aqua, just to kind of explain what my concerns and issues are. And hopefully that'll spur some discussion. It won't take too long to run through these. But there's really only kind of one indication I can do in about a minute with GIS data that's out there, and that's the existing county parks and other parks. Really, it's the best indication of where some of the natural areas are that people like to get to. And you can just buffer those and show that it might take, within a quarter-mile walk, what's nearby those parks. You can see there's some park deserts throughout there as well. Mason District, I'm sure, is pretty bold on there. And then you can look at our regional trails, which is what we spent some time talking about, the Capital Trails Network, which are like the WNOD, the Cross County Trail. The pink one is the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail, and some others. And then that Capital Trails Network, you can see the orange are the proposed and the green are the new. This is probably not up to date, but because they just are updating it. But this is the latest publicly available one. You can see there are some proposed trails, in the county. And I'm not sure, is that hand showing up on your screens as a pointer?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. And then I added in here which is not on the Capital Network, is the Bull Run Aqua Trail. Is probably one of our best natural surface trails. It runs quite a long distance, like 17 or 18 miles. And then you can sort of pick out from Trail Buddy, and it's probably not completely accurate, but it gives you a good indication of where the natural trails are, and which are highlighted in yellow. And again, you can sort of see most of them are in parks for the most part, but people that live near those parks can maybe get to them, but the people that aren't near parks cannot. So there's a pent up interest in getting to natural areas and parks. I'm going to zoom into where the red box is to the Lee and Mount Vernon district along the Route 1 corridor now. And I'm going to pick on Huntley Meadows here because it's fun to do. And we need to keep reminding everybody that that's one area where we lost some trail connectivity into Huntley Meadows. And you can sort of see that same quarter-mile distance from any of these parks. And you can see the Route 1 corridor is a huge desert of no access to natural areas or parks, and some others as well. I think this might be part of Fort Belvoir land down there. And of course, the only natural trails are in parks in Mount Vernon and Lee districts, pretty much. The Lee District Park or Huntley Meadows. There's some parks along the Paul Spring branch through here that have some trails in them. Of course, there's the Mount Vernon Trail, which is the best one, but most of them are little trails, little pieces of trail. They're nice, but they don't connect to anybody or anywhere. You walk in the park for a few feet and then you're done. There's some real nice places actually we get hidden in there. And one of them, for example, is at the end of back in here is some huge trees and stuff. So there are some really nice places that have good access. You just can't get them, and you can't really know that they're there unless you walk around enough. And then our regional trails in this district are just the Route 1 corridor. There is a regional trail along Route 1 that's planned, but it hasn't come to fruition yet. And then the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail over here. There's a Cross County Trail is a little bit off to the left there. And then, and looking at ways that you could improve that, I just drew some arrows here to diagram some thoughts about how to increase access, especially for this corridor. That these trails, if you looked at the drainage easements and stream valleys and floodplains, only land that's really left in natural condition, you could clearly make trail connections into Huntley Meadows. Of course, if we had the two trails we lost, that would be pretty terrific. The pink one is one that was going to be a hard surface trail, but this was going to be a natural surface trail to the north. I'm just going to show a couple pictures. Here's that gas and water line to the north of Huntley Meadows. It's a beautiful walk. There's kids and stuff that hang out back in there. They like it. It's their own little private world back there, but it's easy to get to. This is behind the Mount Vernon Plaza. It's a kind of, this is what's left of nature in Mount Vernon Route 1 corridor. This is Little Hunting Creek, which is near Audubon Avenue, and a lot of lower income folks that live in these areas, reasonably high density, but they have no natural areas or parks or trails or anything. That's what they got. Or Doe Creek, which is to the south and heads up toward Huntley Meadows. It's a pretty wide creek valley, and I think as part of the Route 1 plans, they were able to get an underpass here that would provide some of that connectivity. But all those things are really the only way that we can get better access to nature, natural areas, or natural surface trails in this area. And Huntley Meadows plays a huge part. And I'll just share one other example here is in along the Aqua River, where you have all these great regional parks. Most of them are Nova Parks or BLM, like Meadowood. Poic Bay Regional Park, I think, is Nova Parks. Mason District, Mason Neck State Park. There are some county parks like Old Colchester and Mason Neck West and Laurel Hill as well. Great abundance of natural areas in that park, but to try to get there is another challenge. Again, here's the sort of quarter-mile walking distance to any of those parks. Not many people live in these areas either. And then the trail system, you can sort of see the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail kind of winds through this. This one is the proposed one right here through Old Colchester Avenue. Goes underneath 95, all planned into Occoquan Regional Park. And then hits the Cross County Trail as well. And I think we spoke at length about the Lorton Station and the Poic Stream Valley is another opportunity there. And you can sort of see those highlighted here. Being able to connect up Occoquan Regional Park with Meadowood and Old Colchester underneath 95, underneath the railroad and across Route 1. That would easily connect those two great places. And once you get into Meadowwood, you have all of Mason Neck access. So in that case, you have a really good opportunity, for example, to take the bus down or the VRE or future some data bus rapid transit that far into Lorton, and then you should be able to access kind of a loop trail system that would give you access to all these great regional parks. That'd be another way you could increase access to natural areas and through natural surface trails, maybe a combination of natural and hard surface trails. And of course, it all hinges on being able to get under there's some really critical points here under I-95. I might have said it 66 before, it was 95, where this is what you have to figure out how to get a trail along. It'd be kind of fun to build and design one, but it's going to be a lot of money. But so all those barriers like 95 and 66 and the railroads and Beltway are really critical points which help increase connectivity from one part of our county to another, from one regional park to another, from one neighborhood to a natural area. James isn't on the phone here on the call tonight, but he shared with me, and he might have shared with some of you, his idea for an Annandale Greenway as well. And here's that same desert of no natural areas, no proximity to parks, no trails inside these 5-minute areas. So even if you live close, you couldn't walk to these parks. So what I wanted to do, and I think I'm going to give this back now, is just speak, just kind of have a little conversation maybe, or see how we could encourage more of this kind of discussion relative to the active Fairfax Trails Plan. I think you heard me maybe a year and a half ago asking about the Park Authority had actually included access in part of their long-range planning, and then it kind of disappeared. We never really saw what happened to that. So this is like a nowhere land between neighborhoods and parks. You could fill in the blank. It happens with schools as well. It happens with other destinations. And it seems to me that most of the emphasis is on these big regional trails, and they're great. I love the regional trails, but being able to just get on your bike or walk to a park or walk to a neighborhood destination is really what people really want. And natural areas are a huge part of that. So if we could go back to the agenda, I'm going to stop sharing maybe. See if I can, there we go.
Yes, you can stop sharing and I can reclaim presenter role.
Yeah, if you could put that agenda back up, there's the questions I think that Bob had organized on there. I think one of the things is that our county has a lot of great places in it, but you just can't get to any of them other than a car. So it's very difficult for people, and I think it's come very prominent now, is that people want to get out and walk because they don't go to the gym anymore. They don't want to or can't. So they get a lot of exercise by walking around. And if you sort of start inventorying where you can walk to and I walk every day, and I'm stuck by how few choices I have about where I can walk to. So it's a good indicator of how barren our county is relative to connectivity. And so some of these issues here, the natural surface versus the paved, the priorities for funding all seem to go towards the 25 million projects or even the 1 million projects, when maybe all we need are smaller segments that connect one trail to another. In the integrated system, we have a lot of people that provide natural destinations. I'm giving that as an example here, whether it's the Park Authority or Nova Parks. There's homeowners associations that have parks and things. And the way that they're connected there's no sort of overriding way that they're connected. It's not the Park Authority that connects from one park to the other. And going through our conversation with the National Capital Trails, it doesn't seem like we're able to add on to that system any trail that isn't in that Fairfax County DOT doesn't have some control or ability to put on the map. And that's what got me started, I guess, because I wanted to put the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail on the whole thing in our county priority. And I think Nicole was pretty adamant that they could only do it where they controlled the right of way. They couldn't sort of act for Nova Parks, or they couldn't act for Park Authority. where they control some of those things. So who is controlling it, and who is the one that's able to kind of knit this all together? And the knitting is what's missing. And then finally, the funding sources and urgency. I did have an interesting conversation this weekend with State Senator Surville here that represents our district, who was very interested in creating a dedicated trail funding source at the state level. So I said, oh, that's great, you know, and I asked him kind of more what he thought about it. And he said he didn't really have much more about it, but he was really interested. So this is where I think maybe some of us, I don't really have a lot of legislative experience, but a lot of you might, you know, that might be able to give him some package of information about what a dedicated state level funding source might be that would include not just big projects, but also smaller trail projects. And so I thought that was pretty amazing. Yeah. So Yahoo. So
and maintenance. Just let me say, you know, building more trails is nice, but
maintain the trails, that'd be even better. A maintenance trust fund, that's what we're asking for.
Can I clarify one point? And sure. I believe I made this before when we were talking about the Capital Trails Coalition map, is that our major concern is that a lot of the, I'll call stream valley trails, which is what are the longer connectivity trails in parks, I'll say, not just the little local ones for little parks, but ones that have a regional connection won't meet their criteria. Their design, it's a design criteria problem that we have. And so then that's where you kind of get into this crux between what I'll call a commuter trail for regional versus a recreational trail. And so we are getting into, and I couldn't go into a lot of details, but we're getting into ADA problems. We're getting into fair weather crossing problems. Like there's lots of trail problems in these natural areas that won't meet the design criteria that the Capital Trails Coalition has laid out. I mean, if they're gonna change that criteria officially, not via an email, if they want to change that criteria on their website formally, we can have that conversation again. But that's the major concern, is that the design criteria for what Capital Trails wants to lay out will not match a lot of the trails that the Park Authority has in these natural areas and stream valleys.
That's a really good point. And I think it calls, to me, it sort of speaks to the need for a comparable natural surface trail network that does not have those criteria. It's more based on connectivity and access, you know, that would create a network like big loops and loop systems or something to that effect. I don't know what that is, but I think we desperately need something that will compete for funding with that Capital Trails network if all the money is going to go to projects on their list.
And then the other part is that we can't fund projects that are not on our parkland. So like we'll get a question all the time, like, can you put a sidewalk connection to this park? I can't. We have limitations on what I can fund, and it usually has to be on parkland. Yeah, so it has to go to FCDOT, or it has to go to DPW, or it has to go to VDOT, and they don't often connect to our parks. They avoid us. I mean, they go to roads. So
this is the problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask a historical question regarding the trails you said were lost in Huntley Meadows?
Yes.
I'd like to know which trails were lost and for what reasons.
So the two trails, one on the north and one on the south. The one on the south goes through the power lines.
Sure.
And the one on the north was through those gas and water lines up there, you know, that I showed the picture of.
Right.
And they were taken out as and I don't know, Chris, you might have to correct me here, but because I'm pretty jaundiced on this, but it came out of the Route 1's comp plan, so blanked on the name of it, you know, but the comp plan amendment for the Route 1 corridor.
It was a comprehensive, it's a comprehensive trails plan, wasn't it?
Embark.
It was
Embark. Thank you. I should know that by heart, but I'm so it evolved from that, and it came from now Chairman McKay, who was your representative in Lee District, having some conversations with the folks at Huntley Meadows somehow, where those trails were seen as never going to be being built, and that they should never be built in their minds. Yeah, and so we did get a promise from Chris
And
that the active Fairfax plan would address those two trails. So I don't know
because I
whether or not-
remember initially hearing that that was something that was being planned, but then it just kind of like disappeared, and I never actually found out specifically why it disappeared. My thought process is like you, it's a great walk. But like when I heard it was lost, I was like, oh, those were trails at one point. It's still, you were referring to the plan for them to be put
Yes.
into, okay. I'd love to be
Yeah,
like,
not,
wow.
no trails were built. Well, there's trails.
I was like, that is interesting. Some time ago that these things were removed and I was completely unaware. All right, that makes
The
more sense.
plan for their
I heard
improvement
it.
was removed.
Got it. I heard it, you know.
Fine.
So just to like kind of touch on to your discussion, I've always found it strange that Huntley Meadows, for as much acreage as is there, has as few miles of trail as it does, like within the park itself. I know there are a good amount of unofficial trails that are like readily trafficked and heavily trafficked, but it's like, I know those aren't really Huntley Meadow trails or county trails or anything like that. So it's always good to see that other people are using those trails. However, it makes no sense that they're not trails on the map.
So let me add to that discussion since it's Park Authority land, but I know I love
These
Jim
were
brought this
not
up.
necessarily on Park Authority land.
No, well, Huntley Meadows is. Huntley Meadows is Park Authority land. The other side of the Park Authority's mission is preservation and protection, environmental protection. And so there are a lot of land, but it's dedicated for preservation and protection of the environment and the archaeological cultural resources that we have in that park. We do have a presentation on the Park Authority's trails page that talks about natural surface versus hard surface trails and what happens to natural surface trails when a good majority of people use them. They can spread out. A 6-foot trail can turn into an 18-foot trail, degrading the environment on either side of where people go because they're muddy. And so we have a hard balance sometimes between protecting environmentally sensitive areas and opening them up for public use because of the deterioration that the area is open to when people go off trails. So it was a public hearing. The board approved the removal of them. There was a big decision, so that's where it went. But we have to find a way to balance the two issues. And Huntley Meadows has other protections in it where we get grant money, but we can't add any more impervious surface to that area. And there's, things of that nature that we have to protect in it. So Huntley Meadows is the crown jewel of protection. So that's why we are very sensitive to new trails in the park.
And I get all that. And I'm just asking for trails to Huntley Meadows at the moment. Now, I would love to see the trails through those utility corridors, which I think would actually, given the amount of use the northern one gets, would actually solve your 18-foot wide problem because people are doing that. I did it myself, spread it. Oh, it's too muddy there. I'm going to go to the right. So, but if you had a nice trail with partly built on boardwalk, it would give people a place to walk, So I guess, and here's the point I guess I'm making. I think the point you were making about Fairfax County Park Authority is limited in what they can control. Fairfax County DOT is limited in what they can do. But it's these in-between places that nobody seems to have any responsibility for or ability to speak for, where we have the greatest need for trails. So I'm befuddled by how we could move forward with some better connectivity in our county. I'm really at a loss, really, how we could do that.
One of those ways is through the development world and not allowing waivers for these facilities. So, a trail waiver will come in. A sidewalk waiver will come in, and while it looks piecemeal, when one lot develops into 3 houses, and they say, well, I'm not putting in a sidewalk because no one else has one, it's really staffs and maybe the board of supervisors, staff and or representatives who are on here to say, no, we really need this. We have to put a foot down and say, you got to build it. It's infrastructure that's needed. So there's a land development aspect that needs to be chased down adequately in order to get those improvements by those in-between areas that we don't control.
Well, it's difficult for me to let this whole issue pass without talking about the committee's extended history about the Huntley Meadows trail and the removal of it from the master plan, and the fact that the committee we took a meeting from the director of the park where we asked, I think, some very pointed questions about the actual environmental concerns, and there were a number of us who were quite doubtful about that, but that's a lot of water under the bridge because we basically lost that fight. We were very strong in our opposition to removing the Huntley Meadows trails without replacement from the master plan out of cycle. The master plan has changed in an organized way, and to remove something out of cycle really does tend to prejudice the whole process. And in fact, this hasn't happened. Our concern was this would solicit other neighborhood groups that didn't like trails to get their future trails removed out of cycle with no alternative consideration. Supervisor McKay wrote back to us and basically said we have to agree to disagree, and offered as an alternative that we would put in place. We would create a process that would seek alternative trails that would replace the trail that was lost through the planned trail that was lost through Huntley Meadows, which leads to an interesting question for staff and others. What happened to that process to discover alternatives for east-west transit across a clearly underserved component of the county, which all of us said, Deanne, we're delighted to have you here. We were trying to anticipate the question you were asking, I think a year, maybe 2 years ago, because anybody who looked at the map, and Jim showed us the map tonight, will know that it's a problem of people moving east-west in that particular area of the county, and Huntley Meadows would have helped us a lot with that area. So, Chris, where do we stand with that?
I figured it would come to me sooner or later, and hopefully you can hear me and my WebEx isn't warbly. And I was waiting for the committee to finish their discussion on Jim's excellent presentation. Jim, I'm sorry Nicole's not here tonight. I would ask, and I texted her, and she's aware of your presentation. I would ask that you repeat this presentation for Nicole, because your issues of the quarter-mile access to parks and the importance of natural surface trails are very much what we are trying to capture in the active Fairfax transportation plan. Even though 5 years ago, if you'd asked me if hiking trails was part of my job, I would have said no. I have been educated otherwise, that those trails are part of the feeder network to the more traditional transportation plans. And so there, in our meetings, there's literally a hiking, equestrian, and I guess that's it, hiking and equestrian natural surface trail segment, where we're soliciting input on that. And again, at the Mason meeting, we actually had some very good input on the local nature that's available if people can find it and can get to it. And I should also mention, by the way, James Albright of the Trails Committee was a very vocal participant in that meeting. So to that, your presentation was excellent. I texted Nicole, and I'll have her reach out to you to find a time where you can repeat that with her, and then once she sees that, I'm hopeful that we can somehow feed that to our consultant for the active Fairfax transportation plan, because it's literally the kind of stuff we're soliciting on our interactive maps. So we do view natural surface trails as an important part of the overall network, and we adamantly plan on keeping them as part of it. Like Beth said, though, for the Capital Trails Network, that is not something we're in charge of. And so we've tried to fight with them about 10-foot versus 8-foot trails, and let alone natural surface trails. So that's nothing we can continue to fight, but that's just not our, we're not in charge of that. However, you mentioned the funding opportunities, and that's sort of another catch-22, and certainly something that you should highlight, in that, there are there are some recreational funding opportunities, but the majority of our funding opportunities are transportation focused. So I was first of all racking my brain. What kind of funding do you need for a hiking trail? But there's certainly bridges and things like that that would complement a hiking trail, and so that's a really good point. And then Huntley Meadows. This is certainly a huge issue for Diami and others who are new. It was as part of the Embark comprehensive plan process. It was a board follow-on motion to delete those trails under the community concern that was raised in Embark that those trails were put on there without community input, and that there had been some history many years ago in an area plans review process that they were supposed to have been deleted already. And then instead of them being deleted already, we actually added one in 2014 when we did the bicycle plan. So for those who were advocating for the original removal of trails, they felt that the opposite had happened, that we actually added one as part of the bicycle master plan. And so, as was said, we were directed to have this follow-on action by the board, where we had a community meeting, and the board literally had testimony from like 1,000 people around the world about the cultural and I guess more importantly, environmental significance of Huntley Meadows Park. And they eliminated those trails. They asked us to look for alternative access as part of the active Fairfax transportation plan. And then because we didn't have funding for it at the time, we were told to go ahead and have a preliminary charrette with the community, which we did. The years are going by now with the pandemic, but it was 2018, 2019, somewhere in there, which was actually turned into a productive work session where local community members from the surrounding communities did come out to us and say, well, this is how we get into the park. This is where we access. And we had little tabletop exercises and stuff like that, similar to some of what Jim was showing on his map just now. That intent is still to be carried forward in the active Fairfax transportation plan. But the reality is, as Jim pointed out, we have one agency, the Park Authority, that has it's their land and has multiple priorities. We have our agency, which has other priorities. And what I said from the beginning about Huntley Meadows is, we would defer to the Park Authority on their wishes for a neighborhood community playground or anything, let alone Huntley Meadows, which is literally the jewel of their park system. And so there was exhaustive discussions about the impact of humans on the park. And you all have mentioned some of that tonight, that, well, maybe the humans have more impact when there's not a paved trail. But the Park Authority was adamant that they didn't want a paved trail. So we will continue to look for alternatives. And as part of this process, there is literally the first day we put our interactive map up, someone drew on the map that there should be a line through Huntley Meadows Park, and that's probably Jim. But we're gonna have that discussion. Certainly the most, and if I'd say important, but the issue that was brought up through all this process was the inequity in the local underserved communities that border the park, particularly on the south, that do not have an official access point to the park. And so they need to get in their car, which they don't own, and drive around Lockheed Boulevard to go to the park entrance. And that the elementary school on Lockheed Boulevard doesn't have a sidewalk to get to the park, so there's not even a good way to get the kids at the local elementary school into the park. So those issues resonated with Chairman McKay and the rest of the board, and certainly the Park Authority, because the Park Authority wants access to the park. A former Park Authority board member made the point that we have a bike to work day, that we need to have a bike to parks day. So this is absolutely an important issue that we're all working on, but the Huntley Meadows issue is certainly complicated and certainly does not have a one-size-fits-all solution. So again, Jim, I really appreciate your presentation. That's exactly the kind of updated information that we need to consider. Our countywide trails plan is more macro scale, not micro scale. Some places it's micro scale, but generally it's more macro scale. And so we are absolutely looking to update it for the micro scale.
Well, I just want to say one more thing about sort of overall vision and goals, and it would seem like one good goal would be for maybe we as a committee could work on this and suggest it, but to have a well-connected natural surface pathway network that would compete for funding with this paved trails, that we need something that would, I give the example of, a lot of people really like just grass and trees, just casual use areas in parks. But as soon as you do a master plan for a park, and Beth knows this too well, I'm sure, it gets filled up with like a playground or a ball field or whatever. You just can't have grass and trees. It's the same way with sort of natural surface trails. You just can't have a walk in the woods as part of your, of your master plan. I think we need a vehicle to do that in this active Fairfax plan. And I don't know the answer to it. I can certainly start noodling around with some words, but I'm sure some of you are much better with the language than I am. But I think we do need a goal that just deals directly with this issue, and then also deals with the issue of the bifurcated or trifurcated system of trail providers that we have. I just put it on you about Prince George's County. They have a huge MNC PPC. They've got Prince George's County, has a parks department within it. They've got cities in there. They all seem to figure out how to work together, though. And I just find that Fairfax really needs to find a way to work better together. I know you do. I mean, you all talk to each other and you work well together, but the end result isn't like coming to fruition. So how do we get from all that good work that you do to the next level, which says we've got a fundable project that is a network of walking paths or whatever that serves these neighborhoods like Mount Vernon Woods, which has no parks and no trails, and everybody, few people drive, just as Chris was pointing out. Why shouldn't that be as competitive or more competitive than adding another hard surface trail, near the airport, or something like that? So I think that's my biggest desire out of all this conversation.
I have a question and more just a comment for you, Jim, is that do you think your frustration is more of we have a bad plan, or do you think is we don't have a good way to execute it? Because, I'll stumble across, for example, I found an easement from 1976 that we got for a trail along a stream valley that we've had since 1976. It's still not used. It doesn't show up on a map anywhere. I found the plat. We reestablished it in 1992 and we're still not using it. So, one, we didn't know about it. And two, it's how you get it and implement it. And, and also speaking with my long years on transportation projects, it takes a really long time to build a sidewalk. And it's unbelievable amount of time. And for Park Authority, going to that hat, we don't have enough money. I mean, I'll tell you right now, we got for trails development, we got $4 million. Half of it's going to the 2016 projects because we didn't have enough money to fund those completely. And they're now going like we have like $1 million to play with trail connection. So I'm just curious if it's really more of a implementation frustration than a planning one.
Well, I think the plan that was done in the 1970s was fantastic. So just carry it forward. It has all those stream valleys in it. And I think you're absolutely right. It's really just, it's the knitting together of those little pieces, and it's not very glamorous. It's not very fundable, but it's the only way that the trails get built. I think like down there on the Aqua, Nova Parks and Northern Virginia Conservation Trust and others have been assembling some land down there, and it's taken a long time, but now they have most of the land under control that allows you to get under I-66 and connect over to the other side there. I mean, I-95, I'm sorry. That gets you over there, but that took a long time, and so you're right. So the macro scale plan that is being done right now is the time to establish those desired and priority linkages, whether they're loop trails or network trails along big streams, or whether it's just the stream valley plan we had originally. And maybe those stream valleys that are sensitive have the natural surface trails, and then the transportation related trails are more closer to the road system. I mean, it's not that complicated. It's just how to draw or figure out. It's just really complicated how you make it all work. So I think your B is the right answer to your question. And I love the fact that you found parcels from 1970 something. That's fantastic. I mean, that's really what it takes to get this stuff to make it happen.
I have a cabinet full of them.
So we all know
that's how long it takes. I mean, it goes from subdivision. Really, a lot of the connections that could be made come from subdivisions. So when the county bloomed and the post-war and all that stuff, and when the 1980s and stuff, that's when a lot of things were acquired, whether it be parkland and or trails. And a lot of the trails have been built by developers, in all honesty, the majority of them. We have 330 miles of them. 40% of them are paved and 40% of them are natural. The other are like gravel. They were done by developers. And so it's fixing in those missing pieces, but that's the hardest part.
Could a volunteer help you with that?
Maybe. So I'm in conversations with our IT group, our GIS group, because it comes down to cost. So developers give easements all the time for trails, which would probably be a lot of your missing connections, where you could build a trail because they gave an easement, but they didn't actually build something. To go back, they didn't really require developers to record them in a GIS format. And so unless you have the site plan in hand and can go back and find the deed book and page number, you are trying to piece together subdivision history to find the missing trail pieces that were given in an easement for you to make those connections. It's a money problem right now. Like, I don't have staff and I don't have the time, and I can't go back and ask GIS to like give me millions to go research every site plan submitted to the county. But I try when I can. So, and that's where one I stumbled across. So it's a work in progress. I'm trying to come up with a game plan, and maybe it's something a future meeting we can talk about. But yeah, it's certainly one. It's like my trail crusade right now, is like finding the things that came in through development that have been lost over time because we didn't make the developers fully recorded the way we needed to.
I think it's the funding sources. That's the fourth bullet that Jim talked about. With just whatever the money that the park authority has, it's not enough to care for 320 miles and even to look for these new connections. Some cities and states, or some city park authorities, have taxing, bonding authorities, and the libraries and the parks are just so underfunded. If you compare what Fairfax County spends per capita with Vienna or some of the other places down south, the public needs to probably speak their mind, I think, and maybe the active Fairfax transportation plan and these community meetings, if people would speak their minds, and if that could be put into the text of some of the problems, I think that's what the problem is. Underfunding.
Maybe I should do pass the hat. So I'll just walk on trails and pass the hat. So
I think we need to take Senator Serval up on his interest. He wrote, as a young man, he rode across the country on a bicycle. He's got it in his bones. So
well,
we
maybe
need Fab and some of the others to kind of figure out what he needs to ask for. I was kind of floored when he asked me about it, and I said, "Oh, that's what a great idea," but I didn't have like a ready answer to say, "Oh yeah, you should do this." So I felt like I missed my opportunity. But I don't think it's too late. I think right now is the best time to kind of formulate some kind of dedicated funding request, whether it's for maintenance or for natural surface trails and how that fits in with the larger projects. I mean, I think we really need to sort that out. But
well, there's one item that came up today, which, you know, I wish there was a way we could work with it, is that, so commercial development had done a trail waiver and they're supposed to escrow money to put towards the trail, right? So instead of building a trail, developers are able to escrow funds for a trail, we'll say. So we get an email from LDS today that says, hey, are you going to build this trail? And we're like, it's next to a railroad in the middle of the I-495 mixing bowl. Like, how are we going to, like, we don't even own land to put a trail in that we can't even use the money. So, you know, we have things out there. There's little pots of money that are recorded, and somehow if we can get that money put towards trails in the vicinity of where they were supposed to go, it would be helpful. But again, I don't have the ability to build a trail on private property that is not parkland, and I don't have parkland in the middle of the mixing bowl. So, but it's a Stream Valley Trail that's on the plan. So, you know, it's that thing that we constantly run up against that we're trying to make use of, but are limited because there's limitations of what I can use that money for. I can't just take it. I have to use it for something in that vicinity for a funded project. But
I'm sure there's no shortage of opportunities if we can get them all on a map somewhere. So, and I guess that brings
more people.
Yeah. And maybe from the active Fairfax transportation plan, whatever it's called, I'm still struggling with those words. The macro picture might be that, you know, we come up with some types, you know, that connects one park to another, or connects a school to a park, or connects a neighborhood to any of the above, you know, and maybe we take those categories as ways that you could take that funding and do one of those kinds of things that are smaller projects. And I mean, I think your example of the, you know, old parcels that feed one to the other, James's map that he shared with me about the Annandale Greenway, I think he's calling it, is filled with little things like that where you could connect from one park to another, or a neighborhood to a park, or give access to a neighborhood that doesn't have access. I mean, there's probably a dozen of them in there just alone, you know. So I think there's no shortage of projects, and just I think maybe within each district, maybe there's a way to kind of create a priority area or something to that effect that ends up in the plan.
Hey, Chris, I had a question, and I walked that with Jim recently. He and I walked that Annandale Greenway alignment, and the good thing about it is for the park pieces, all of the trails are mainly there. And so I had a question, and this goes back into history. You know, the Sully historic cycle tour thing that was done out in Sully district, was there meant to be other ones in other districts? And could this be the Mason one?
That's a great question. I didn't supervise the bicycle program at the time, so I'm not exactly.
You can call Charlie and ask him if you want.
Charlie and Adam, exactly what they were doing. But I do believe the idea was that it was a demonstration project, that it showed the whole intent was a bicycle route that was ecotourism or local park access. It's not really tourism, you know, if you're a local, but what locals could go do as a family on a bike and learn about in that case, the Civil War history of the Sully area. So that's certainly a formula that could be replicated elsewhere in the county. That was funded with TAP transportation funding, and it's mainly wayfinding and a map and things like that. It was not actually infrastructure, so to speak. But yeah, to me, I would certainly say that that's a formula that could be repeated elsewhere. And
yeah, we talked to him about maybe branding and coming up with a symbol or something like that, because it would just be signage and recognition. So, because it does follow the Manassas Gap Railroad line, and there's other historical pieces in the Mason District Park, in terms of cultural resources that are out there already. So, but yeah, I thought I had recalled that it was a demonstration project, and it was supposed to be spread to every district was supposed to have one, or at least something like that. And I don't think that.
Well, you're talking big now, but yeah, you know, there's nothing that says it couldn't be. I mean, certainly wayfinding is a huge, not a huge, but a very important component of the bicycle master plan. That we've implemented wayfinding projects, you know, here and there, but not, you know, certainly we've never had the budget to do it comprehensively. A more exciting way to do wayfinding is to do it as a branded route with points of interest and stuff like that. And that's exactly what the Sully Civil War Trails route and map does. So yeah, that's certainly something you know, to consider. You know, I wrote down what Jim said, that for our vision and goals, we should have a well-connected natural surface network to compete with for funding. And so, you know, maybe even a concept like this is, you know, I don't know if it rises to the vision and goals of the active Fairfax transportation plan, but you know, what we're talking about is certainly ways to highlight the local communities' assets on trails that are points of interest and stuff like that. There's a more romantic way to say it than I just said it. But yeah, you know, this is, it plays right into what Jim was saying about, you know, the community's desires to get out and access their parks and even just walk in the woods, but also to know, you know, the history and which of course, as a 275-year-old county, we have no shortage of history.
So can I just ask a quick question about signage specifically? So, you know, we're talking, I understand, you know, his idea for the Annandale Greenway, that's a whole series of signages, et cetera. But what is the actual cost for like getting a sign put in somewhere? And how, because I know there's plenty of places in the county where, you know, there is some signage, but it's really not sufficient to get you where you need to go, or it, you know, doesn't really direct you the right way, et cetera. What is the process and how hard is it to actually get a new sign in?
My highway signs are like $150. I don't know what the wayfinding signs are, but I would guess it's about the same. Because they are custom, they might even be more expensive because they have a custom message on them rather than a standard highway sign that you just repeat over and over again. And they're to develop routes. You have to make sure the sign, the wayfinding points to the right or the left or whatever. So there's a little bit of engineering planning that needs to go into that. But you know, a ballpark price for one sign is $150.
I don't have an exact number in terms of for Park Authority. We have ones that are, you are here, and it shows kind of the park location map and where the trail goes. Those are, as Tom describes them, ridiculously expensive for what they are. So we don't have too many of them. The other ones we have are less expensive, easily stolen is the best way I can describe it. So it's either an overdone sign that is cemented in the ground and can't be taken out, or it's a cheaper sign that we can't keep in the ground. So we run both sides. Tom and I are in the process of coming up with a new way to do signing in terms of it's affordable, more affordable, so we can do more of it, but not as easily stealable as like those core site signs that you see at the CCT, or knockdown or flammable, which we've had people light them on fire, vandalism, all that kind of, we run their gamut on signage problems. So we're going to try to put some money towards it this year and try to work on a pilot project.
Have I mentioned that people are terrible?
Yeah, we know that. They all go to parks.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I want to move to the next item on the agenda, which is the staff report, new items only, keeping in mind that we have about 20 minutes left, Chris.
Sure. So I scribbled out a couple of things that I guess aren't as important. I'll just quickly go over some of the highlights of my past month. We did wrap up the paving meetings. We had the paving meetings in all 9 magisterial districts. There's as usual a lot going on with that. You can go to our website to see all the road diets or striping plans, a couple of road diets that we've proposed. And so we're still doing some follow-up work with that. We met actually with Jim and Supervisor Stork and Senator Cerville on Fort Hunt Road. That's actually a lessons learned and important for the committee. We typically focus on wide roads that we have the opportunity to add comprehensive striping to or road diets. And we had not focused on a road like Fort Hunt Road, even though it was being paved, because it wasn't wide enough to add bike lanes. And luckily, Supervisor Stork spoke up at the paving meeting. And it's always awkward if you're having your paving meeting and your board member speaks up and tells you missed something, but that's exactly what the public process is for. And so what the ask was on Fort Hunt was, okay, it's being paved. What can we do? Can we get a 2-foot shoulder? Can we have any sections of bike lanes at all? Can we do crosswalks? And so VDOT was, to their credit, was very responsive, had their consultant take a look at what the opportunities were. We met in the field last Friday to sort of refine that. And so, again, you can find that information on our webpage, and it's an annual process, and it's imperfect and very dynamic, but it does result in literally hundreds of miles of bike lanes over the past few years. We had the citizens information meeting on the Vienna Metro, I-66 trail, the portion that goes off corridor along Vienna Metro. The ultimate facility is a cycle track with a parallel sidewalk. The more challenging facility is what we want to do in the interim. The I-66 project will wrap up in end of 2022. We will not be anywhere near construction by then for the cycle track facilities. So we've all been tasked with coming up with an interim facility, which is probably going to consist of a combination of taking the southernmost lane of Virginia Center Boulevard and Country Creek Road and putting up concrete barriers and making an on-road cycle track behind concrete barriers. And then when we get at Sutton Road, a combination of maybe bike lanes and sharrows. The challenge is going through traffic signals and a freeway off-ramp, but we've had to establish a working group with VDOT to continue to work on that so that we can deliver an interim facility also by the end of 2022. This is important because the I-66 corridor project will be building the I-66 portion from Gallows to Vienna, and then from Vienna out to Fair Oaks, and then through Fair Oaks and through Fair Oaks again out to 28. And so this piece in Vienna is the one area that when that facility opens really would benefit from an interim facility. We have some improvements in Fair Oaks, but in the interim, there's actually places to ride bikes today. Let's see, the I-495 Next project is the other big freeway widening project with private sector toll road involvement. The hot off the presses news this week is that the Board of Supervisors did approve an endorsement letter to be sent to the Commonwealth endorsing the project. There was opposition and there was support. The important things for the Trails Committee's consideration is the fact that it does include a trail component from Lewinsville Road to Live Oak, which is the small road just to the north of Georgetown Pike. With, of course, plans to tie into the Maryland facility and go across the American Legion Bridge. So in my entire career, I've been asked how we could get bicycle access across the American Legion Bridge. So certainly from my perspective, we view this as a positive. I certainly understand some of the opposition. The opposition is mainly focused on the fact that Maryland is running behind Virginia. And so in the interim, the Virginia widening will stop at the border. And so in the interim, congestion might actually be worse instead of better. But Maryland has been moving forward. Maryland has also tapped the Transurban company, which runs the 95, 395, and 495 express lanes already, and will be doing the I-485 next expansion. So as you know, the positive out of this is that it does seem like everything will come together, just not at the same time. We've continued to work with VDOT on some of the details. It stops at Lewinsville because we were not able to find a way to bridge into Tyson's. You know, I have a vision of how we could get into Tyson's by going along the Dulles Toll Road and bridging over to Tyson's too, but that was not within the footprint of the I-495 Next project, and is something that will, you know, again, is a vision of mine, a dream for us to pursue in the future. We had looked at all the ramp work that they were doing, excuse me, at the Dulles Toll Road, and to see if there were opportunities to add a facility to some of those ramps to get directly into Tyson's, and there was just nothing feasible. Even if you were 100 feet in the air, it wasn't feasible. So we did get them to reconsider how we were handling the Lewinsville Bridge, and so they looked into the engineering request that we asked of widening the sidewalk on the Lewinsville Bridge to make it wider for bicyclists. And luckily, the answer is that that can be done, and that they will do that. So that's happened in the past month here, that's been resolved. So then you would go up Lewinsville to 123 to get to Tyson's. So that's that. One new thing that's come along is I don't know if the committee's familiar with the Smart Cities, whatever they are, company initiative. We've been involved in some smart cities efforts in the past, including our autonomous shuttle that is running in Merrifield, or was running in Merrifield. I don't know if it still is. It may still be as a pilot to pilot autonomous shuttle technology on public streets. It was literally the first autonomous shuttle on a public street in the United States. We've been involved recently with a pedestrian bicycle safety. It's called a pitch and play, I think, Smart Cities, where we've solicited applications from anyone, small, big, large tech companies, local advocacy groups, so on and so forth, on technology pitches that could help either analyze pedestrian bicycle safety or set, research and development, scientific trial and error experiments for pedestrian safety proposals in the county. We received 16 proposals. We've narrowed those down to six finalists, and those 6 finalists will be making their final presentations next week at the pitch and play, which I don't know where it is on our website, but I assume you could find information about that and watch if you're interested. A couple of the finalists are focusing on a lot of human factors near miss analysis at intersections and upstream and downstream of intersections. A couple of them are focusing on technology that could benefit the vulnerable road users by doing things such as extending walk times or alerting drivers. And another one is in a vehicle manufacturer that is looking to integrate that type of intelligence to their intelligent onboard vehicle information in their latest vehicles, again to provide safety research and benefits to vulnerable road users. The last thing I should mention is some of you probably attended or were aware of a conference that George Mason University had called Accelerating Active Transportation in Northern Virginia. David was involved in communicating with George Mason on the setup for that, so we were a sponsor. It was a day-long conference, a virtual conference on a variety of active transportation topics. Chairman McKay spoke, Supervisor Polchik spoke, Deputy County Executive Rachel Flynn spoke, amongst others. And it had a variety of topics, such as, the sessions I attended involved certainly one on post-pandemic transit use and the concept of maybe making transit free to get people back into transit. Another interesting one was the business case for trails, where one of the panelists was the National Landing developer and the whole economic development around National Landing, which is the new name for Crystal City, and the Amazon headquarters. The more interesting case that the Trails Committee would be interested in was the guy from the city of Alexandria. I don't know exactly what economic development or trails or something, but he used to work in Stowe, Vermont, and his presentation was really cool. If you're at a ski resort in Stowe, Vermont, you basically have 43 days out of the entire year that are your marketable days. And other than that, you don't really get any revenue. And not at his effort, but at an effort that was already ongoing, the Stowe community put together a bicycle trail that went up and down the valley, and again, similar to what Beth was talking about, tied into ecotourism and local points of interest and everything. And that Stowe was able to, and I don't have the exact numbers, but they were able to double or triple the tourism revenue that came into them by developing this year-round bicycle trail facility, and that now Stowe is a destination year-round, not just for 43 years. So that was, pretty cool and pretty compelling of the economic business case for trails. And then the more serious presentation I attended was one on equity, and it was Charles Brown, who is a street level researcher, as he calls himself. He has a company called Equitable Cities, and he's worked with a lot of jurisdictions across the United States about equity issues and in transportation. And he made a presentation titled Arrested Mobility, which was following along the lines of the historic challenges that people of color have had to ride a bike or walk and get arrested or killed or whatever because they're just riding a bike or walking. And he made the point that, this is a huge part of our population, and as professionals, if we want to increase biking and walking, then we also need to increase the biking and walking of people of color, and the helping to deal with this real issue of fear and acceptance. And that he made the point that as transportation professionals, that it's almost like reparations, that we need to proactively make reparations for the systematic racism of the past in transportation, and as we move forward to have that, really as a priority as we make decisions such as the Active Fairfax Transportation Plan or future funding or whatever. So that's just a snapshot of the. I missed Chairman McKay's presentation, but I know what Fairfax County's doing. So anyway, that's just a snapshot of what was going on that day. And again, it was definitely a good presentation. I believe those videos are available on their website. So again, it was titled Act. In fact, they should be. I haven't come back to check, but they should be posted on their website. It was titled Accelerating Active Transportation in Northern Virginia. So if you just Google that and go to George Mason's website, you could watch some of those presentations yourselves, and I would encourage you to. So that's what I have. You all have any questions about anything?
I just put sorry, real quick. Sorry to cut you off. I was just saying I put the link in the chat that Chris was talking about.
On the I-495 next trail, there was some discussion about having the trail change sides up close to the bridge. Some interest groups, I guess, were proposing to relocate it. Was that ever changed, or is that what it was previously planned?
So the meetings I was involved in was actually changing the side towards Lewinsville, because there is a minor Stream Valley Trail south of the freeway, and the current proposal is north of the freeway. To my knowledge, and I'm sure I would have heard about it, nothing has changed. It runs on the north side from Lewinsville to Old Dominion to Georgetown Pike. At Georgetown Pike, it does switch to the south side, runs along Balls Hill Road to Live Oak, the Live Oak Bridge, and then that's where it stops as part of the Virginia project. The planning and some of the grading will be in place on the south side to head down to the George Washington Parkway ramps, and then make that connection to Maryland. However, until Maryland ultimately makes their decisions, none of that is a done deal. However, from the Virginia side, it is intended to be running on the south side of the Beltway, north of Live Oak.
This is Wade Smith. Just a slight correction. You mean east and west side of the Beltway, but I believe Maryland's proposal for the bridge puts a shared use path, probably 10 feet, I don't know, on the east side, the downstream side of the bridge. That's what I heard just last night.
Does that mean the trails are going to be opposite sides?
No, that's the same side. If I said north and south, for some reason I pictured the Beltway sometimes east and west up there, but he's right. It's north and south, and so inside the Beltway is east, outside the Beltway is west. So from Lewinsville to Georgetown Pike, it's on the west side. From Georgetown Pike to Live Oak, it's on the east side, and into the George Washington Parkway interchange. There'll be some grading and some planning for it to be on the east side. And so by what Wade said, that's the same side.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, our apologies, because we have used up the entire 2 hours. Let me open the floor at this point. If any of the committee members have an urgent issue that they'd like to discuss or like to put before the committee, with the possibility, if it's an extended discussion, we can defer to next month. So let me see if there's anything out there that people want to talk about.
This is Wade. Is there a 2-minute version of an update on the I-66 status, trail status?
Yep, sorry, unmuted. So the 2-minute version is the portion at Vienna Metro is funded. It might need some supplemental funding, and we're working to get that as part of the commuter choice funding that's available. but we're moving fully ahead with the design of that. Again, it's a cycle track along Virginia Center Boulevard and Country Creek, and then it'll be a shared use path on the south side of Sutton, leading to Blake, and on the other side of Blake, and we're doing a new crosswalk at Blake, new crosswalks at the signals along the previous roads, and then it goes back on 66. At the Route 50 interchange, it comes out into Park Authority property, Fairfax County Park Authority property in Random Hills Park. The Park Authority is building that portion for us. They have something on their website recently of a public meeting and showing the improvements through Random Hills Park, which is basically following the existing trail that's there with some, deviations to improve the trail and make it a decent bicycle facility. We'll have a rapid flash beacon crosswalk crossing Random Hills Road to access the trail that's along Random Hills Road, which at the government center becomes a sidewalk. So we will widen that sidewalk into a trail as well. Then along Post Forest Road, we restriped that road with on-road bike lanes a few years ago and put it on a road diet. We will take advantage of that road diet space and actually rebuild the curbs of Post Forest to build a shared use path on the south side of Post Forest. Vienna is being implemented by VDOT, and this Random Hills Post Forest portion is being implemented by VDOT. Again, we have like $4.9 million on that it's going to need another million or so added to that. So that's actually part of our federal, the draft federal request. Then it goes back, it goes into Fair Lakes, and there'll be a trail. There's a trail along Fair Lakes Boulevard now. The I-66 FAM EMP consortium will build a new trail along Fair Lake Circle. I'm going over 2 minutes, sorry, which will tie into the west side of the Fairfax County Parkway and run up the Fairfax County Parkway on-ramp to I-66 West, where it rejoins I-66. At the 28 interchange, it comes out and has two connections. It connects to Braddock Road in the northwest quadrant, but then it runs south along 28 to the 29 interchange at the Newgate Shopping Center. And then that's where we have the remaining funded off-corridor portions. We have a portion along the Newgate Shopping Center and the Trinity Center development that we're upgrading sidewalks to trails, or a trail where there's nothing along there. Then there's existing trail running out 29. And again, at the Stone Road Park and Ride, we'll be widening the sidewalk to a trail along there. And so those are the portions that are funded. The last remaining portions that were proposed would continue west along 29 and get into the Cub Run Stream Valley at two different locations that we've previously considered to get along the Cub Run Stream Valley out to Compton Road. That portion is not funded yet, but we're still pursuing funding for that. A small section along Compton Road underneath I-66 is being built by VDOT and the I-66 consortium, so there will be a trail from the Cub Run Stream Valley trailhead over to the Bull Run Regional Park rear access road entrance. And then again, that's all we have planned at the moment. Ultimately, if Prince William County's interested, then we would consider crossing Bull Run into Prince William County to make a connection to, I think it's Falls Ford Road, or some 4-lane divided that they are extending that sort of points in the direction of that connection to Bull Run. So But that is not been funded or agreed to by Prince William County. But that's the vision that was put forth as part of the I-66 project.
Thanks, Chris. Any other issues folks want to bring before?
Ken, this is Bob.
Please.
Just to ask all the attendees if they have any agenda items to get them to me by the Wednesday, the 28th of April for the May meeting.
Check. Wednesday, the 28th of April. Remember, April's a short month.
And Ken, for recording minutes and stuff, I'm looking for a volunteer for May, and then I was gonna start pulling names out of a hat. So if you want to volunteer early, feel free to step up, send me a message, and then after that, I'll probably just start assigning names, hopefully, and then you only have to do it once a year, or more than once a year, less than once a year.
So we're going to make it easy for you. We'll get you a template beforehand and a checklist so that you can check attendees and that type of thing. But we do want to make sure we ease the burden on our elected secretary here so that she doesn't, melt down. Yes. Okay, with that, I think motion is in order. All right, you guys, you know the rules.
I move we adjourn.
I'll second. Jim Klein will
Okay.
second.
Time is 9:07. So I guess we will see everybody next month.
Take care, everybody.
Have a good rest of the evening.
Bye, everyone.